Hello everyone, today we're talking about what I and many others consider to be the worst archetype matchup in competitive singles, at least in recent generations, and especially in Generation 9. That matchup is Hyper Offense versus Stall. For those of you that don't know what these are, I'll briefly explain. Pokemon has many different team styles, which are called archetypes. The Balance archetype uses a mix of walls and offensive Pokemon, which is why it's called Balance. On the extreme ends of this spectrum, there's Stall, the bulkiest archetype, which is usually a team of 6 walls, and Hyper Offense, the most offensive archetype, which usually consists of 3 to 6 sweepers, as well as a breaker or two, and/or hazard-setting suicide leads. In the current SVOU metagame, both of these archetypes are viable and see significant usage. But typically, when Hyper Offense runs into a Stall team, it's a very one-sided match. Hyper Offense generally relies on stat-boosting setup sweepers to win the game. Things like Calm Mind or Swords Dance Iron Valiant, Dragon Dance Roaring Moon, Nasty Plot Darkrai, Dragon Dance Dragonite, Fiery Dance Iron Moth, Swords Dance Kingambit, and Calm Mind Raging Bolt are just a few examples. Stall has the ultimate counter to setup, Unaware. This ability allows the user to ignore the opponent's stat boosts entirely. An unboosted Raging Bolt will do about 35% to an Unaware Clodsire, and a Raging Bolt that has used 6 Calm Minds will also do 35% to an Unaware Clodsire. Clodsire walls almost all special setup, and Dondozo walls almost all physical setup. Particularly in Generation 9 with the addition of these two, Clodsire and Dondozo, the bulkiest Unaware Pokemon ever, Hyper Offense has a really tough time against Stall. Dragonite and Kingambit won't make any progress against a Dondozo, and Iron Moth, Raging Bolt, and Iron Valiant are walled by Clodsire. And that's just 2 Pokemon. Even if you have a sweeper like Roaring Moon, which has sets that can overwhelm Dondozo, your opponent has 4 other team slots they can use to manage that. With so much of your team essentially useless on Team Preview, many Hyper Offense teams will find themselves in an unwinnable matchup. Of course, many have found solutions to this problem, and some of them are better than others. In this video, I'm going to go over how you can build your Hyper Offense team so that it beats Stall. I'll explain the solution, then go over how well it fares against other archetypes. Hyper Offense teams want to beat Stall, but not sacrifice their matchup against Balance, Offense, or other Hyper Offense teams. Something like Mold Breaker Haxorus is incredible against Stall. It has base 145 attack and the ability Mold Breaker, meaning it ignores Unaware, especially useful since it also gets Swords Dance. But it's terrible against almost any other archetype, because it's slow and very frail. Just because something destroys Stall, that does not mean it's a good idea to put it on your Hyper Offense team. I'm going to explain which solutions are good against Stall and good against other archetypes, and which are good against Stall, but really terrible against other archetypes. Let's get right into it. Number 1, Hazard Stack plus Knockoff. Now at first this may sound kind of bad. Hyper Offense always produces short games, and to get any benefit of hazard stacking on Stall, you need to set hazards, knock off the heavy-duty boots of something, and then have it enter again. Is that really going to happen in such a short game? Well, yes, but probably with only one Pokemon. Mostly hazard stacking and having a physical setup Pokemon with knockoff is just for Dondozo. Since Dondozo can't recover outside of rest, Hazard Chip is a big deal. If you can set hazards with a lead like Glamora or Hisuian Samurott, knock off Dondozo with something like Iron Valiant or Roaring Moon and force it to enter to deal with another setup sweeper, it probably won't be healthy enough to do so. Hazards plus knockoff can also help with Alomomola and Toxapex, which are also very common on Stall. This is one of the best solutions Hyper Offense has to the Stall problem because it's very good against other archetypes. Hazards are great, and knockoff is an amazing move, not just against Stall. You don't lose anything by incorporating this onto your Hyper Offense team. Number 2, Offensive Overlap. This is where you put 2 or more Pokemon on your team that are walled by the same things. The best example is Roaring Moon and Kingambit. Roaring Moon can damage a Dondozo very heavily early game, which is especially effective if there are hazards up and a Roaring Moon has knockoff. In the endgame, a Tera Dark Black Glasses Kingambit could easily push past a weakened Dondozo. Unfortunately, against Stall, it's not quite this easy. Stall teams prepare for offensive overlap, especially common cores like Roaring Moon and Kingambit, and they ensure that these sweepers have multiple walls. Stall won't just rely on Dondozo to handle Kingambit and Roaring Moon, but also Corviknight. That means if you want to beat a Stall team with offensive overlap, you'll need to do more. Perhaps in addition to Kingambit and Roaring Moon, you have a Swords Dance Iron Valiant, a Swords Dance Scizor, or a Dragon Dance Dragonite with Encore. This works on the special side as well. A Nasty Plot Goldengo could wear down Blissey and Clodsire, or force a Tera if it has Psyshock, and that could open the team up for a Nasty Plot Darkrai sweep later on. This is a great solution for Stall, because it also works well against other archetypes. If your offensive overlap can overwhelm the defensive core of a Stall team, it can definitely break past the defensive core of a semi-Stall or Balance team. It should also be noted that these two things are not mutually exclusive. You can use hazards plus knockoff and offensive overlap on the same team. That goes for anything on this list. The more anti-stall measures you have, the stronger your stall matchup will be. Number 3. Mixed Attackers. Most Pokemon on Stall are designed to handle physical Pokemon or special Pokemon, but not both. Dragon Dance Icicle Spear Kyurem with Freeze Dry and or Earth Power, Mixed 4 Attacks Iron Valiant, Calm Mind Close Combat Iron Valiant, Dual Status Dragapult with Hex and Dragon Darts, and Hurricane Dragon Dance Dragonite are all solid examples. Dragon Dance Kyurem's Icicle Spear would normally be handled by Dondozo, but thanks to Freeze Dry, there's not much Stall can do. Calm Mind Iron Valiant is often answered by Blissey or Clodsire, but with Psyshock and Close Combat, these answers fail even with Tera Steel or Tera Dark for Psyshock. Dragonite is usually hardwalled by Dondozo, but Hurricane can 3-hit KO, which is sufficient against a Pokemon with only Rest as recovery. Similar to other items on this list, you don't lose any ground against other archetypes by using mixed attackers. DD Kyurem with Freeze Dry can surprise an Iron Defense Corviknight on a Balance team, and Calm Mind Iron Valiant can shock a Kingambit when it pulls out Close Combat to get a kill. Dual Status Dragapult, particularly with Hyper Offense, is great if you face another Hyper Offense team. The main downside to mixed attackers is that they don't beat Stall nearly as reliably as Knock plus Hazards or Offensive Overlap. They're still a great resource, but you can't count on them alone. A Dragon Dance Kyurem, for example, can be handled by Corviknight chipping with Body Press, then finishing Kyurem off with Clefable. You can count on the Dragon Dance Kyurem to do some damage, but not win outright. Hurricane Dragonite can get solid chip on Dondozo, but 2 Avalanches will kill, leaving Dondozo alive and Dragonite dead. Furthermore, what moves do you drop on Dragonite? If you're running Dragon Dance and Hurricane, you might need a Fire move to hit Corviknight and then Ice Spinner for Gliscor, but if you do that, then your set loses to Clefable. And on top of that, that Dragonite set wouldn't be very good against a lot of other teams. Iron Valiant with 4 attacks might sound amazing against Stall, but what if Toxapex just uses Tera Fairy and walls everything you have? Almost every mixed attacker can be counted on to make a Stall team sweat, and get a kill, wear something down, or force a Tera, but there isn't any mixed attacker that's just going to win against Stall outright. Number 4. Booster Attack and Booster Special Attack. When I was describing why the Stall matchup was so bad for Hyper Offense, I explained that Unaware was the biggest problem. Unaware ignores stat boosts, but not booster energy, meaning the 1.3 times boost to attack or special attack that booster energy provides will be factored in. This means that Pokemon like Iron Valiant, Iron Crown, Iron Moth, Iron Hands, Great Tusk, Raging Bolt, Walking Wakened Sun, and Roaring Moon can all effectively use this boost against Stall. Some Pokemon like Roaring Moon and Raging Bolt utilize this boost to booster attack and special attack anyway, but most, like Iron Valiant, Iron Moth, and Iron Crown, prefer to run booster speed for the 1.5 times boost. Using Booster Attack and Booster Special Attack on Pokemon that don't typically use it is very effective against Stall, since they won't be nearly as prepared for it as they will something like Booster Attack Moon or Booster Special Attack Raging Bolt. The downside is that for most matchups, you'll probably wish you had Booster Speed on these Pokemon. With the exception of Sticky Web teams, Iron Moth, Iron Valiant, and Iron Crown usually want a speed boost. Going with Booster Special Attack will improve your Stall matchup, but at the cost of your matchup against other archetypes. Unless, that is, you build your team to compensate for this and appreciate the greater power in exchange for speed. This is a great way to break Stall, and it definitely will improve your matchup, but unlike Hazards plus Knockoff, Offensive Overlap, and Mixed Attackers, implementing this can hurt your matchup against other archetypes if you're not careful. Number 5. Tera Forcing. This is similar to Offensive Overlap, but different enough that I thought it warranted its own section. Some Pokemon are easy for Stall to beat as long as they have a Tera, but impossible to beat without it. A good example of this is Nasty Plot Psyshock Goldengo. A Tera Dark Blissey or Tera Steel Clodsire can easily shut this down, but if Tera has already been used, then this Goldengo is probably going to sweep or at least get a lot of kills. You may say, well, so what? Tera is a thing, Stall has Tera, so what good is running Nasty Plot Psyshock Goldengo when almost every Clodsire is Tera Steel? This becomes a very effective strategy when you have 2 Pokemon like this. Pokemon that Stall needs different Teras to beat. Suppose you ran this Goldengo with Psyshock and forced a Blissey to Tera Dark. Later that game, you set up a Dragon Dance with a Tera Blast Electric Roaring Moon that destroys Corviknight and Dondozo. Normally, Dondozo would be able to Tera and handle this Roaring Moon, but of course, you can only use Tera once. This is a great solution for Stall, but probably the most difficult one to implement. There are Tera Forcing pairs that can beat Stall, all without sacrificing your matchup to other archetypes, but they're very difficult to find. On top of that, they're constantly changing because it depends on the current Stall metagame. If Ting-Lu was on 10% of Stall teams, then this Psyshock Goldengo idea is pretty good and probably would work most of the time. If Ting-Lu was suddenly on 60% of Stall teams, this would not be very good. Remember, with any of these strategies, they only work most of the time. I'm fond of saying there's a Stall team for every team. You can never beat 100% of Stalls, eventually you'll run into one that will wall you. Another case where this could not work is if Quagsire became more popular than Dondozo, then this Tera Blast Electric Roaring Moon wouldn't be helpful at all. So forcing Tera is a great tool, but you need to be aware of what Stall is currently running and make sure you don't run an obscure Tera forcing pair that sucks against non-Stall teams. Number 6. Taunt. I figured that I should probably mention this, given that this move literally blocks recovery, status, and hazards of any kind, which invalidates almost all of what Stall tries to do. On top of that, the distribution of Taunt is great. Almost half of OU gets it, and many hyper-offense viable Pokemon do. The problem is that very few Pokemon use it well. Basically, just Roaring Moon, and even then it's not a super common or strong option, and it's only used to improve the Stall matchup at the expense of other matchups. Darkrai, Iron Valiant, Raging Bolt, and Kingambit all get Taunt. And using Taunt on these Pokemon would be absolutely devastating for Stall. But it's almost entirely useless against other teams. Darkrai wants to run Nasty Plot, Dark Pulse, Ice Beam, Sludge Bomb, Focus Blast, and Will-O-Wisp before Taunt. Iron Valiant wants to run like 20 moves before Taunt. Raging Bolt hates to give up Calm Mind, Dragon Pulse, or Thunderbolt, and Kingambit wants to run Swords Dance, Kowtow Cleave, Iron Head, Sucker Punch, and Low Kick over Taunt. Would a Nasty Plot Taunt Darkrai destroy Stall? Absolutely. Would a Tera Ghost Kingambit with Swords Dance, Kowtow Cleave, Taunt, and Sucker Punch destroy Stall? For sure. But it would suck, or at least be a lot worse, against every other archetype. Taunt is amazing against Stall, this is true, but it's just not that great of a move in the current metagame, and I generally caution against using it. It can be used successfully on some Pokemon and some teams, but more often than not when I see Taunt, it's used by poorly built teams as a crutch against Stall at the expense of other matchups. Number 7. Some breakers and sweepers. There are some Pokemon that are just really good against Stall and don't cleanly fit into any of the other categories. I'll list a few of those here. Primarina with Tera Ghost, Substitute, Calm Mind, Psychic Noise, and Draining Kiss is amazing against Stall. It basically wins on preview as long as you manage to get up a Substitute, which isn't hard to do given how passive Stall teams are. The problem with this Primarina set is that it's very inconsistent and terrible against non-Stall teams. It also needs Light Screen and Reflect or Aurora Veil to work best, and Screens teams are pretty terrible in the current metagame. Ursaluna with Guts and Flame Orb is nearly unwallable, and although its poor longevity means it won't sweep, it can often get 1 to 3 kills before dying. Ursaluna is slow and easy to revenge kill though, so it's not a popular choice on hyper offense. Poltegeist is actually not bad against Stall thanks to Shell Smash and Stored Power. The problem here is that Poltegeist really only works on Psychic Terrain teams, which are gimmicky, unreliable, and generally pretty bad. Ogerpon Cornerstone is like Ogerpon Wellspring, but even harder for Stall to deal with. Stall has begun to use Sinistra, Amoonguss, and even Vileplume to answer Wellspring, but none of this will help against a Rock-type Ivy Cudgel. While Cornerstone is great against Stall, Wellspring is better against nearly every other archetype, making Cornerstone tough to justify on hyper-offense teams. Zarude is a random low tier that actually really messes up Stall. With access to Swords Dance, Knockoff, Power Whip for Dondozo, and Jungle Healing to heal status and health, Zarude is one of Stall's worst nightmares. But it's also just pretty bad against other archetypes and generally not a great Pokemon. By now you're probably seeing the issue with this list. All of these Pokemon are great against Stall, but are not easy to fit onto a team. Still, if you build your team carefully to compensate for the weaknesses these Pokemon have, they can work well. Note that this list is not nearly exhaustive. There are dozens more Pokemon that can fit on HO and are great against Stall, but most of them are very, very niche. Still, don't let that stop you. Sometimes a Pokemon thought to be terrible turns out to be underrated and a real threat. Also note that this list I gave, and the anti-Stall measures I mentioned this entire video, are about how to beat Stall with hyper offense. I don't want to see a bunch of people asking what about Choice Band Hoopa-You in the comments section. There are a lot of anti-Stall Pokemon and strategies I didn't mention in this video because they're not good on hyper offense. Now that you know how to make your hyper offense team stall-proof, the next time you feel like playing hyper offense, don't matchup fish, roll the dice, and hope you don't see a Stall team. Prepare a team that's consistent and can handle the Stall matchup. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. All that helps out a lot. Thank you, and have a good one.